Hello, and welcome to another episode of Therapy on Tap. In today's episode, I want to talk about why it's okay to care what other people think. The idea of not caring what other people think is very common in a lot of circles, especially in a lot of self help circles. And the idea is something along the lines of, hey, you just got to stop caring what other people think if you want to find true freedom, if you want to get rid of your anxiety, if you want to improve your self esteem. And I think this advice is not only bad because it's completely impractical, usually it doesn't come along with anything really helpful. It's just this vague idea that you should just stop caring what other people think. Just do you, just live your life, just enjoy your life and do your thing. And there's really nothing that the person can connect to try to understand how does one actually do. So that's the first problem with it. And the second problem with it is if you take it to its logical conclusion, if you truly didn't care what anyone ever thought, what would you be? You would be a complete psychopath. I don't think this is a virtuous way to go about life. I don't think this is a virtuous goal. There's nothing good about not caring what other people think. And I think that people who struggle with social anxiety or struggle with self-esteem, they feel like this is their goal. This is what they have to get to. If they want to be confident like other people, they have to not care what other people think. But then they're given no guidance on how to do that. And again, it just tilts them in the wrong direction. Because the reality is, of course, we care what other people think. But what we have to do is figure out whose opinion is going to be important to us. We can't let everyone's opinion matter to us because then we'll be completely lost because everyone has a different opinion on everything. There's no possible way you could come to any conclusion by going to one person and going to another person and then you have no sense of identity whatsoever. The idea that you can go through life without caring what anyone thought, you would have to be completely detached from other people. And I don't think this is the goal that most people want when they think about becoming more confident, improving their self-esteem, becoming more comfortable in social situations. And I'm going to get into how we go about figuring out, well, then what direction do we go in? How do we figure out who we should care about? Whose opinions should we care about? And how do we figure out when should I lean into my own beliefs? When should I look towards others? I'm going to get into all that. But the other issue I want to bring up, just one last issue about this whole not caring what other people think thing, is that when people actually enact this in real life, really what they become is a caricature. They become a caricature of someone who they think is confident because their goal is not actually self-discovery. They're not actually interested in figuring out what they're about, right? If your goal is to just not care what other people think, then that becomes your goal, is to just figure out, how do I just stand out? Which is essentially what people who become contrarian do. They just find ways to stand out. And I can relate to this personally because when I was in high school, I had tremendous social anxiety, really even into my later teens and early 20s. And I remember distinctly there was a point in my life where I was toying with this idea of trying to not care. And I remember I would do things specifically just to stand out, just so that I could tell people, hey, look, I don't care what other people think, as if this was some sort of show of confidence, when in reality, it was just another attempt to get approval from other people. It was just in a backwards way. I was just trying to show people, hey, look how much I don't care about what you think. I'm going to go say this ridiculous thing. And I think this is what happens with a lot of people who don't actually have a sense of identity and they haven't discovered who they really are, and they're trying to be confident. They can very easily fall into this trap where they're just making it up on the fly. They don't learn anything about themselves, and they're just trying to stand out for the sake of standing out. Look, there's some benefit in that, right? You learn how to speak up to the crowd and poke your neck out and stand out a little bit. But again, that isn't going to get you to actual self-discovery and being at ease and at peace with yourself. So I think the whole idea is just complete nonsense and isn't going to help you. Okay, so what can we actually do? Where do we actually go from here? Well, I think the first part of this is actually inward. We don't actually have to go to other people just yet to figure out what their opinions are. What we have to do is actually block out all the noise, all the ideas you've been told, all the things you should think are important. And you have to ask yourself, what do I find important? Because the reality in life is values are subjective. Some values are objective, okay, like murder. We can all agree that murder is objective. But the way in which we live our life is subjective. For some people, gaining power and money and finances, that's important to them. Okay. And so they will direct their lives towards those things. And for some people, that's actually their genuine desire. They want those things. But for a lot of us, we get convinced that those are the things that we should want. We want the nice house with the white picket fence, with the spouse and the kids and the dog, because that's what everyone else is doing. We should like this type of music because everybody else seems to like that type of music. We should like this sort of hobby because everybody else seems to like this sort of hobby. And we start to think that the world is one way and we have to fit in that one way. And if we don't, we're outliers. And if we're outliers, people aren't going to want to be around us. And that's where that fear of isolation comes in. And so we just start to mold into what we think people want, even though deep down we know there's something wrong. So I think the first thing we have to do is shed all of those ideas. We have to ask ourselves, what are our values? Because if your parents' values or your friends' values or your community's values, the people around you are telling you, you should do this, you should work really hard, make a lot of money, get a big house, and deep down you don't really care about that stuff, you want to make a comfortable living, but you want to enjoy your life and pursue other goals, then no amount of money is going to make you happy. So you have to sit down with yourself honestly and ask yourself, what are my values? What do I want to pursue in life? And what kind of person do I want to be? And if you're unsure what the answer to that is, you can look out in the world and ask yourself, what kind of person do I admire? What are the types of people, when I look at them, I'm impressed by? I want to be like that person. There's something about that person that calls to me. And so you have to ask yourself, well, what's important to me? What do I drive towards? What do I navigate towards? That's where you should be headed. So that's step one. Then you say, okay, maybe I have an idea of where I want to go, but I'm still worried about what other people will think. And this is where we have to hammer down. We need to care what other people think, but only certain people. Who are those people? Well, maybe the people who share the same values that you do, who are along the same trajectory as you are. If you're not interested in making a ton of money and you want to pursue artistic goals and you start comparing yourself to people in your life who are making a ton of money, you're not going to feel very good about yourself. But it's a false equivalency. You aren't being fair to yourself. Those aren't the people you should care about. They can go live their life and do their thing, and that's wonderful for them. If that's what's important to them, that's what's important to them. You don't have to be like them, and they don't have to be like you. What you have to ask yourself is, am I doing things in the way that I want to do things? When I see people who I relate to, am I living up to that standard? And this isn't just lifestyle, this could be moral decisions too. And again, this is where I came to the point before where if you don't care what other people think, you'll just become a psychopath because, well, you don't care what anyone thinks. So you have to ask yourself, well, what are my values? Well, I want to be a kind person. I want to be a caring person. I want to be a giving person. And so let's say you decide, I want to be kind and caring. So you start to enact that in your life. And then someone comes across and calls you weak because you're too nice and you're too kind. Well, should you care about what that person thinks? Well, maybe not, because they're not in alignment with your values. Right? Would you care what a hardened criminal thinks about your moral system because they think you're quote unquote too nice? Who cares what they think? They're not in line with your values. You have to figure out the people in my life who I agree with, who seem to share my values, what do they think? And the great thing about this is now you can actually take criticism that is meaningful and it doesn't have to completely tear you down. Let's say someone close to you, a family member or a friend, nudges you along the way and says, hey man, that thing you did the other day wasn't so great. It really hurt my feelings. You should care what that person thinks. If that's someone who cares about you and who loves you and who shares the same values as you, they're not trying to manipulate you. They're not trying to run a game on you. They genuinely are hurt by what you did. Then you should listen to them and you should say, oh man, you know what? I should care what this person thinks because this person is important in my life and we share the same goals. I think that's the best we can get. We like black and white answers. We like things to be one way or the other. But for most things in life, that isn't the case. Most things, there's a middle ground. And so I think the next time you're struggling with this self-identity and asking yourself whether or not you should care what other people think, I think you should ask yourself, what values are values that I aspire to? And what people in my life also aspire to those? Those are the people I will care about. I will care what those people think. The people who are not living the same kind of life as me, they can go do their thing. Not for me. Totally fine. not for me. And I think even from a societal point of view, I'm not going to get big into a political argument here, but I think generally that's the best we can ever get, right? I mean, societies at large almost never agree on major topics, right? There are just some topics that are so divisive, people are just going to disagree. And the best sometimes that we can do is say, okay, well, you go live your way over here, I'll go live my way over here. It's the best we can do sometimes. There's no right answer sometimes. So I hope you found this helpful, and I hope you keep in mind that you don't have to be this rough and rugged guy who walks around, oh, I don't care what anyone thinks. The people who actually do that, who really believe that, again, those people are psychopaths. You don't want to live like that. Okay. And the alternative is you have to try to fake that. And faking that won't actually help you find yourself. So it's just not a good path to go down. So be wary of that sort of advice that's out there that tells you to just not care what other people think. It's not practical. It's not helpful. You should care about what people think, but only certain people. And only after you've figured out what it is you want in your life and what goals and what values are important to you. Thanks again for listening in, and I'll see you soon.